The question posed is for your discernment. Before we get to that, let me introduce myself. My name is Matthew Whitney. I'm 31 years old, born and raised an Ithacan American. I identify myself primarily as an inventor and stay-at-home dad. Each role inspires the other, and my two greatest joys are easily multitasked. I love Lillian more than I can imagine, and anything that threatens her continued happiness I deem to be a threat. For this reason, among many, I'm compelled to give humanity the ultimate in energy conversion processes. This has less to do with my delusions of grandeur, and more that I'm an overprotective daddy. The hydrocarbon age is a threat. When I'm not studying physics and raising Lily, I engage in the creative, culture-jamming fun I can afford. When I was 5 years old, I'd tell all the grown-ups that I was an inventor. Not that I was going to be one, but that I was one. On bright, crisp days, I'd stare into the blue and I thought I could see the wind. You know, that stuff that looks like silvery air sperm? Now I know it by many names: aether, prana, orgone, quasi-electrostatic bioplasma, and more recently, vacuum fluctuations, zero-point energy, or dark energy, simply an omnipresent, rarefied, and subtle field, synchronous and symmetrical to everything. The same time I began saying that I was an inventor, I began saying I wanted to be on TV. I wonder, will Current accept my crackpot pod? Maybe now that the failure of a 30-year-old self-serving energy policy is obvious and the ripple effects are being felt, people will be receptive to my trip, which began 10 years ago. In 1996, I had a vision that I was at a press conference giving ultimatums to the bad guys. The ultimatums are too megalomaniacal to repeat here, but the leverage for them was a free energy device. Until that moment, the concept of free energy, or perpetual motion, had never really entered my mind, but after that moment, the notion has become an all-consuming passion. History and skeptics would suggest I'm delusional and wasting my time, but history is written by the winners, and skeptics are bottom-feeders who do backseat science. Shortly after my vision, fate introduced me to two men in the past. They're best described as mad scientist inventors, and are in fact the archetypal progenitors of this Saturday morning sci-fi staple. Their names are Nikola Tesla and Victor Schellberger. I could spend hours touting the genius and virtue of these men and their affairs with evil, but I will simply state that I have large shoes to fill. I've learned from their mistakes, and there is some unfinished business. The term Free Energy Messiah was coined by Eric Krieg of FACT, a skeptics organization out of Philadelphia. The term describes a free energy inventor who specifically claims to be inspired by and/or working for God. They also have a tendency to solicit funding from the ignorant for a prototype that is never quite complete. I've discovered that in this subculture I'm immersed in, there seems to be a disproportionate amount of Christians and like minds that are not mutually exclusive to those in the community with real credentials doing real science. Deism and metaphysics meet in this world of occult technology to the dismay of some, but to me, if science can't explain God and God science, then neither are very useful. Officially, though, there are only two men recognized as being free energy messiahs, Dennis Lee and Joseph Newman. They've been at it for a long time and have garnered a considerable amount of funding and publicity for their alleged technologies. The only real difference between Dennis Lee, Joseph Newman, and myself is that my inventions are merely significant innovations on concepts originally created by Nikola Tesla and Victor Schellberger. These are ideas that have already been through proof of concept stage, are patented, and proven to work. When Dennis and Joseph are asked how their inventions work, they begin spouting pseudoscientific jargon, the stuff that annoys scientists and keeps Eric Krieg, Michael Shermer, and James Randi employed. But when I'm asked how my inventions work, I only have to point to the most ubiquitous and scale-invariant phenomena known to exist, because my inventions are biomimetic, aka thunderstorms and tornadoes. Further, if it's good enough for Hitler or DARPA, then it's good enough for Home Depot, next to the other generators. Tactical was always practical. And when an academic physicist comes at me with the supposed laws of thermodynamics, I ask them to name one closed system, or one thing that isn't in perpetual motion. Speaking of the establishment, let's consider that if the energy crisis of 30 years ago was properly solved by capitalist market forces, as it should have been, instead of impeded by the DOE, I and others wouldn't be chomping at the bit now. Einstein said that the problems we face will not be solved by the minds that created them. Remember that the next time you see a fossil fuel company patting its back for its eco-imagineering or it's a start BS. If the energy crisis rhetoric and hydrogen hype sounds familiar to the boomers, that's because it is. There are magic wands and silver bullets that will let the sun set on this scourge of an infrastructure, and they aren't miraculous or tapping zero-point energy. There are literally hundreds of efficient, sustainable, and environmentally safe energy conversion processes relegated to patent pools, patent secrecy orders, and greedy, truly delusional inventors. Eric Krieg insists there is no conspiracy to suppress superior and disruptive energy technologies. He cites other industries which didn't fight their demise as evidence for this non-conspiracy. Well, why has Standard Oil basically remonopolized? Do you know what a phase-conjugated solar focus is, or an optical band rectenna? How about a dissociative MHD generator? Why aren't they discussing on-demand hydrogen via advanced water fracturing? Why is a multi-billion-dollar industry subsidized by politicians gladly caught in a revolving door? Why do some people suggest free energy would ruin the economy, when most of the world is poor and could care less about the stock market? The fossil fuel industry insists that solar energy could never meet the needs of our nation or world. Did they forget that oil and coal were once biomass, and that biomass comes from sunlight? They are way into solar energy. They're just 3 degrees and millions of years separated from it. By digging and drilling for ancient energy, the efficiency of our infrastructure actually becomes negative by the time you plug in or peel out, and this needless complication is consistent with an entropy-activated economy. The prosperity of the geezers, the overall indifference of the boomers, and the insanity of the establishment is the opportunity of my fellow Gen Xers. There is no energy crisis, only a policy crisis. Further, global warming and World War III shouldn't be an impetus for change. Sitting in gridlock sucking Satan farts is reason enough. In conclusion, let me state that I'm not here to solicit funding from an ignorant public. Rather, I'm here to ask those concerned to Google themselves to an informed state as I did, so that they might feel confident in funding this particular American inventor,